So for instance, if I say, Nick, hey, you're a racist, your response is, no, I'm not. And the conversation is over, right? There's nothing to talk about. But if I were to come to you and say, hey, Nick, we've gone out to lunch several times, and I think you might have a negative bias towards Asian women. You know, whenever we're in the company of an Asian woman, you react a certain way, and I observe this, you know, talk to me about that. Like, let me know what that's all about. Then you actually have an avenue to say, hey, I didn't realize that, or no, that's not the way I see it. Here's how I see it. And it opens up the dialogue a great deal. So I think that is a key component of what needs to happen with everybody across the board going forward, is having the language and a framework to understand our own tendencies and how to evaluate and break those down. Sorry, that was a long answer to your question.
Yeah, I was expecting a laundry list though of things to improve constructive criticism. Okay. I think one of the things though that I don't know what this really does, but I feel like there was a time when you didn't say race stuff. You didn't say that person is black, because for some reasons that was right, because you're like, oh, that's drawing a color barrier. You know, it's black and white. That's not that simple. Like, oh, that's I'm white, you're black. That was not cool in terms of how we get to like racial harmony. But then I heard this, you know, it was like just ESPN's dude talking about Tom Brady being like, oh, you know, they're like, how do you feel being like this old, like super rich white guy in this locker room? Does this feel weird? And he's like, oh, I don't see race. And I was like, I think that's what we were sort of maybe taught to say. But then the guy was like, well, that's bullshit. Like, that's being ignorant a little bit. Like, well, obviously there's race. So you not seeing it is you electing to feel better about not seeing it. So I think that was one of the things that were right in spirit, maybe, that aren't necessarily wrong. We don't want to be like, I immediately see a thing that's different in a negative way, but we do need to actually say, wait a minute, there's other things that go along. Seeing race for like, I'm going to make a prejudgment is bad, but acknowledging that there are different races or different types of people that have different challenges, I think is sort of what we need to what we are reintroducing, or needs to strongly be in everyone's mind. It's not like, oh, it's all good. Like, it's easy for me to be like, I think it's all good. Like, I'm not doing anything bad. Does that make me by default fine? Like, no is the answer, right? Like, just not hurting the situation isn't enough now. You got to be like,
sure,
you have to see race. You have to be like, you have to see inequity in other race or gender or orientation, etc.
Yeah. So that's a really good point. And there is a really distinct difference between the leadership of a company saying, I don't see color, and even if they say and use all of the popular diversity and inclusion jargon, if they're simply tolerating differences and diversity, if they're just saying, yeah, it's fine if we have, people of color, yeah, we're okay if we have more women to come into our organization, that's very different from saying, hey, I recognize that you have a very different perspective, you bring different skills, and I actually crave that. I want that.